My tagline, or what I always tell families, is the best time to start planning for college was in the womb, and the next best time is today. And I do think that's what happened. We have these beautiful little creatures that God puts in our hands, and then we work so hard to raise them that we're not necessarily thinking about that future cost of college when they're 18 years old and they go on. And I just think it happens that life happens. And so people are not planning for this expense.
Hello and welcome to Pathways. I am your host, Amber Stitt, your host for this leadership series episode. And today we welcome Monica Felton to the show today.
Thank you.
Welcome, Monica.
To be here.
So excited to be able to record with you today. And you have been somebody that's been on my mind through just my community. You're pretty famous, actually, if you didn't know. You're quite the figure and a perfect guest for the leadership series. And it's because of the true advocacy that you've done throughout the last 15 years, working with families, working with them on strategies for what I call financial freedom, but really the flexibility to plan for college and to build some competency. So let's share with the audience a little bit about you and how did you get here?
Thank you so much for hosting me. So for 15 years, I've been helping families save and pay for college so they don't sacrifice their retirements. And I was in the corporate world for almost 20 years prior to changing career paths into the financial service industry. And the reason I did that is because, money is just dirty paper, but it's what money will do for you. And unfortunately, most people don't understand what they want the money to do for them. So the clearer I can get with clients about what their goals and aspirations are and what they want their future to look like, the better I can coach them on money. And so that's what led me from medical device into financial services. And I've just been so grateful over the last 15 years to be able to do this and honestly just never looked back.
I always like to talk with people that have found their own way, their own path to leadership. And when you do this and your family sees you thriving, pivoting, changing the narrative, that's showing leadership to your legacy as well. And I know you're a mother of two, correct?
Correct, yes.
Was there a point in your life as a mother, spouse, partnership, whatever it is, was for you, where you go, I have to really dial into the competency behind college and how to get kids into college? Was that part of the process?
Well, I love what you're saying because yes, my kids were the impetus to change because when I was in corporate America, I was tied to a pager and I was on call and I really was not able to be there, not only physically, but mentally for my children. And so the change in career path was so I could be more available. I think as women, one of our highest callings are our children. And so I wanted to be a provider as well as a leader to my girls. So that's really why I pivoted, working 24/7 on a pager didn't allow me that opportunity. So I had quite a bit of freedom, as we talk about, to be the person that I ultimately wanted to be, not only for myself, but my family.
When we talk about freedom, and I mentioned flexibility, we've talked about, or I've seen you talk about peace of mind. And there's a common narrative with your clients when you meet them, or you've asked them, there's a similar statement that comes to mind. So if you're giving yourself freedom mentally and you have peace of mind, it's a wonderful feeling. You have that now or have had it. Can you share with the audience, what is that typical thing when you meet new clients where they're like, there's that one thing that keeps them up at night?
So I am a holistic planner in that I'll look at people's overall finances, everything they're doing, what their goals are. But I really got very focused 15 years ago because I would ask families, I would say, what's that one thing that keeps you up at night financially? And without question, they would say, how I'm going to afford to pay for college. Now, remember, this is 15 years ago and the cost of college has tripled since then. So it continues to be a very difficult, anxious-ridden, worrisome subject for families about what benefits they're going to provide their children so that they can be successful in their future.
You talk about being an educator on how money works. You help people with mindset, really to dive deep into understanding money. And when do you think people should start even considering planning for college?
Oh my goodness. So my tagline, or what I always tell families, is the best time to start planning for college was in the womb. And the next best time is today. And I do think that's what happened. We have these beautiful little creatures that God puts in our hands, and then we work so hard to raise them that we're not necessarily thinking about that future cost of college when they're 18 years old and they go on. And I just think it happens that life happens. And so people are not planning for this expense. And I know this for certain because in the 15 years I've been doing college financial planning, I've reached out to the primary schools, the middle schools, the junior highs, and the high schools. And really, it falls on deaf ears outside of high school. So the soonest or the most consistent time I get parents to think about college is really the 9th grade of high school. And not that that's too late, but imagine if you were actually planning when you had a 1-year-old, or at least you were considering putting together a source of funds that were specific to your child and the success of their future, because the success of a child's future is not always wrapped in college. A lot of times it could be a trade. We need beauticians, electricians, plumbers, technical people where college is not required. So it's okay to build a pool of capital for your child's success and earmarking it for whatever that future success is, because I know I have 2 girls and they couldn't be more different people. Right? So we don't know who they're going to evolve into or what they're ultimately going to become. But as parents, our job, in my humble opinion, is to give them the tools and resources to be successful in the life that they ultimately want to create. And unfortunately, I think college has been rammed down the throats, certainly of middle Americans. And it's just, again, for many, college can be a benefit, but I don't even think we're having the conversations to discuss what it is that we really want out of our children, or what do our children want out of their lives, to determine if college is even necessary.
Why does it fall on deaf ears at about senior level? You said something about the parents.
Oh, I think the paying for college falls on deaf ears really prior to the 9th grade.
Okay.
Yeah, just because parents are, they're trying to raise a little person, And I will tell you, college is shockingly expensive. And I know this because I talk to at least 3 families a day. I don't think people really appreciate how expensive it is. They just don't believe it. They think they're being lied to. But I'm here to tell you, ASU today is $32,500 a year, and it takes 4 years to get a diploma. That's a whole lot of money. Now, are there options and resources? Yes. And if you have a bright kid, there is some financial aid available. But these are conversations we should be having much earlier in the game. But like I said, at least 9th grade, you should be having these types of conversations with your children.
You give people some space to learn and add on layers over time when it comes to your education. I assume if they're starting when the baby's in the womb, as you joke, but seriously, what if there's more than one?
Oh, yeah.
The sooner you can start, build your competence level, because it takes a little bit of time. You don't have to be a finance background to understand money. And I know you're very much passionate about that, an advocate for everyone in the family, in the household.
Yes.
Needs to be on the team.
Right.
And work together and maybe have different roles in it, but be a part of the conversation. Let's start as early as possible. When you meet people, is there almost a fire drill every year that you have about a time of year where people are rushing to scurry to figure out what to do?
Well, certainly when your student is a junior or senior in high school, there's a lot of scurrying. But the commitment that the college planners here in the state of Arizona and myself in the local high schools, because I speak, all over the state of Arizona to the local high schools, is really to get families to have discussions. I think what's important for families to know is there is no right or wrong, right? Our kids are all uniquely different, and embrace that. But start having conversations with them in the 9th grade or earlier about, what do you want to do when you grow up? What does that look like? Have them go to work with mom or dad and let them get an idea about what they want to do. And yes, money is important. And I have families that earn 7 figures, and money is still a topic of conversation when they're choosing their college of choice. because there are real Ivy League, those very tippy top prestigious schools. Those schools are upwards of $90,000 a year times 4. That's a big number. And then you multiply that times 2 or 3 or 4 children. So money matters. And having these conversations, I think, is vitally important for the success, both emotionally of your child, financially to the parents. And so my job as a financial coach and advocate to helping families pay for college so they don't sacrifice their retirement is, number one, foundationally, what's the goal here? What is it that you're trying to accomplish? Number two, what will college really cost you? There are equations that the government uses to determine how much money you're going to have to pay for college. So what is that? And you'll know that very early. It's based on your adjusted gross income, and you have to pay a percentage of what you earn. So is that feasible? Especially if you have 1, 2, 3, 4 children, will you as a family be able to afford that? A lot of people avoid finding out truth. Let's just get a baseline, right?
Let's be real. We're talking to everybody listening, wherever you are. All of us need to reflect. Are we really accountable?
Yeah, right. And again, it's just information, right? So the more information we have, the better decisions we can make for our future and our children's future. But it is amazing to me how few families that I meet, and I meet hundreds of them a year, have actually had these discussions with their students.
Well, I think too, when we have these amazing kids that might earn a scholarship, that doesn't necessarily mean college is covered.
Oh my goodness, no. So part of my workshop is helping families understand the true cost of college. That term is called cost of attendance.
Okay.
So like I said, at Arizona State University, it's $32,500 a year. Now that's all in, right? That's books, room and board, tuition.
Okay.
That's the whole kit and caboodle. Out-of-state schools are upwards of $60,000, and those elite, prestigious are upwards of $90,000 a year. So families at that point are like, whew, wow, well then I better get financial aid. Well, financial aid is a big word, and I think it's predominantly disappointing.
Yeah.
Because when you get a scholarship, first off, you must be a scholar to obtain that, which means your student has to be better than a 3.5 GPA. So that's all A's and a few B's, right? And most teenagers today, we do have some extraordinary ones, but, they've gotten a C or 2 or a B or 2. So to really get that merit aid, which is based on your student's academics, you have to truly be an academic. So then families will say, maybe I won't get any academic money, but I'm definitely going to get need-based financial aid. Well, again, you can do the math pretty quick. The government expects you to pay 25% of your gross income.
Okay.
So those are the numbers. We can all do math. So financial aid exists, but a full ride scholarship at ASU is a $10,000 presidential scholarship for academics, which means I still have to come out of pocket $22,500.
Well, since we're getting technical, let's do a little case study. You talked about a person that you helped. They're making a certain salary, and there was a certain tuition that came along with it. Can you break that down? I think it's a perfect illustration to what you're talking about.
So Fafsa, the free application for federal student aid, there's a term on there. It's called Student Aid Index. And basically what that is it's the amount of money that the feds have determined that you could pay per child for school. And so that equation is based on income and assets, in essence. So if you're making $100,000 a year, you're going to take 20% of that. So that's $20,000. And then if you have any visible assets, and basically that's everything outside of money already in your qualified plans, like a 401k, cash value, life insurance, and annuities, those assets are excluded from the equation. So is equity in your home, that's excluded. But if I have visible assets like a brokerage account and a savings of, let's say, $50,000 of visible assets, they're going to assess that number at about $3,000. So I make $100,000 a year and $50,000 of visible assets. They're going to say I can afford $23,000 in a year to pay for college for one student. Now, the FAFSA Simplification Act of 2021 basically made some radical changes to the FAFSA. We've had more changes to the FAFSA this past year because of this Simplification Act than we've ever seen before.
So it's helping or no?
Well, it depends. Depends on what side of the equation you are. Middle-class families, in my opinion, are being hurt because as we talked about, having multiple students in college at the same time, there used to be a student discount or a sibling discount. So if you had multiple students in college at the same time, right, you were getting a huge benefit. Now they've eliminated that.
I see.
So the same family that I just told you about who makes $100,000 a year and has $50,000 in visible assets, they're expected to pay around $23,000 a year. If they have 2 kids in college, they'll be expected to pay double. So these are the types of changes that are hurting middle and upper class Americans. Now, there have been some enhancements to availability of Pell Grants, but a Pell Grant's $7,100 a year, and that's what you're eligible for. It doesn't mean you're eligible all of that.
I see.
So yeah, there's a lot of changes that are happening right now with higher education and the cost of and who's going to pay for it. But at the end of the day, I want families to understand you as a family are expected to pay for college. In some instances, you can get help, but that's really a benefit that you are required to pay for your family.
So let's talk about leadership in the home. You've worked with thousands of families over the years. Is there one thing, or maybe even something you're seeing that's a constant after speaking in schools? What can people start doing now to apply some leadership in the home, in the conversations, or setting expectations for their children too?
Well, I think, again, I mentioned it earlier, awareness is key. Really understanding what the goals are as a family, as parents, as students, and talk openly about that. You know, this is where leadership begins, right? Having hard, difficult conversations. Yes. That's what leadership is.
Yes.
It's not, just all the cherries on top. Leadership is really having difficult conversations.
And the kids are watching. If the parents are not organized in this manner, they are not always going to see it right at the beginning. But gosh, as they get to a certain age, they're going to say, my parents didn't have it together.
Right.
And I don't want that in my home.
Right.
There is a little bit of distrust that can come from that where you're going, I looked up to my family, but why didn't they take it more serious? And so we can try, like you said, today.
Yes.
Today is the time to start being serious about it.
Agreed. One of the tenets or the largest goals that I have along with the college counselors at the high schools that I work with here in the state of Arizona is to never have a high school senior sitting in the counselor's office crying again because they were able to get into the tippy top school and their parents can't pay for it.
Oh, yeah.
So imagine that. You're a student. You've worked your tail off. You've done everything right. Mom and dad are driving BMWs. They're, providing cars and housing and all this. And all of a sudden you get into, I make this up, I use Stanford all the time because it's a West Coast school. You get into Stanford, it's $87,000 a year and your parents say, I can't afford that.
Right.
It's devastating. It's not only devastating to the student, which that's of course a given, but devastating to the parents. Imagine how much you've now let them down.
Right.
And in my opinion, could have been avoided. Why are we not having these conversations with our kids? This is life. Life is hard. Life is a financial decision. We have to make choices about everything we do. Finances are no different. And so my job, and I tap my drum as often as anyone will allow me to, is know what are you expected to pay for college, and then let's start building a plan around that. Really what you can afford to pay.
Sounds like you can reverse engineer it once you know.
Yes.
And you've talked about on your different videos you have on YouTube, was at least 5%, maybe 6% year over year of growth on education. So we know that's not changing.
Oh, no.
So there's an expectation. We know it's happening. So beat the drum, because if you know that your family size and what you might want for them, you can backfill and reverse engineer with your help.
Oh, absolutely. And I think getting your children involved in these discussions is very, very important because then they too.
Yeah.
Because as I mentioned, if your student is a scholar, schooler, right, they can earn, and at least in state schools, a $10,000 to $12,000 scholarship. That's a lot. That's a huge contribution that they're making to advocate for their future. Kids should be responsibility for advocating for their future. If you're a C student and not really excelling in high school, maybe college is not the right step for you. Maybe you need a gap year. Maybe you need to go to work. Because again, we are at a position where the cost of college is so expensive that it really is forcing families to make some big decisions. And I have seen very poor decisions being made. And I just feel with awareness and discussion and open conversations, a lot of that really could be avoided.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for what you do. How can people find you?
Well, I have lots of information, educational videos on my website, which is monicafelton.com. I also have a YouTube channel, which is Monica Felton CFP. I have a Facebook channel, of course, Monica Felton CFP. And then, of course, you can always reach out to me. I love hearing from families. I love advocating for families. This is important. And I know I have 2 daughters, 21 and 20, and they're our hearts, and we want to provide them every opportunity possible. So if I can engage and help you in that process, it would be a privilege.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Pathways. For more information about the podcast, books, articles, the blog, and so much more, please visit my website at amberstitt.com. And remember, let's take action today. Thank you for listening.